Hello and welcome to another Tiermaker special on the Football History Boys YouTube channel. Today, so a closer look at the greatest international football sides of all time. We have Italy 1934 to 1938, Spain 2008 to 2012, Brazil 1970, England 1966, France 98 to 2000. We have Netherlands 74, West Germany 72 to 76, Hungary of the 1950s, Uruguay of 1930, and finally Argentina of 1986. Do you want to know how we're going to rank these today?
Go ahead.
We have the GOAT category for that international team that we think is the greatest. We have the legendary tier just below, then an influential tier, before finally we have the nearly men, and then possibly an overrated tier as well. So maybe some of these teams don't quite deserve that place in football history. Right, should we get started? Any initial thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's important to say this isn't just the 10 greatest teams of all time. We know there's going to be people fuming, maybe missing Scotland in the 1800s, missing Wales, Euro 2016, of course, for our Welsh friends.
Well, yeah.
Austria of the 1930s, Poland of the 1970s. There are other great international teams, but these are people who we think sides who have made a real impact on football, and we want to just have a little look about who was the best.
If you have your own ideas, please get involved as well. There is a link in the description below for this tier maker list, so you can have your own go. If you do it, please send it over to us at TFHBS on Twitter. That would be amazing. Right, who should we start with?
I think we should make a start with England 1966. We're in Wales, of course. Let's get England out of the way.
Okay. Right, England 66. Okay, obviously growing up in the UK, we have been told so many times about this great 1966 side.
Yeah. When
they won the World Cup, it was this incredible occasion, this fantastic World Cup. As the game started to come into colour, you know, we have those images of Bobby Moore lifting the trophy, Jeff Hurst's hat-trick in the final. Obviously, there's a controversy in the final with, you know, the third goal for Hurst and possibly the fourth goal as well. What do you think about this team?
I think exactly what you said. This team is so well remembered in the British Isles, regardless of if you're English, Welsh, Scottish or Irish. This team has a massive impact on our understanding of sort of legendary football. Yeah. I think when we've studied history at university, we looked at the impact that this side had on British society and culture, and the fact that everyone got behind this England side to win it on home soil. England at this point had no European Cup winners in club football. Yeah. They'd never come really close in the World Cup after having first rejected it and then joined it after the Second World War. This side is the side that finally gets there, finally at the home of football, as people considered it, announces themselves to the world stage and does it, gets England over the line. Of course, then the impact of that, Celtic win the European Cup the next year, Man United win the European Cup the year after that. So some people would call this an influential side in that way. Yeah,
and of course the manager Alf Ramsey, he's the first English manager to kind of do it himself and pick his own team.
Yeah.
Before him, it was the team was picked by selectors, wasn't it, instead? So the previous manager, who'd been there for a long time, Walter Winterbottom, didn't have much of a say in how the team was run. Yeah. But Alf Ramsey did, and he has that, you know, that West Ham spine to the side with Martin Peters, Jeff Hurst, as we've already mentioned, and Bobby Moore. Obviously, Gordon Banks in goal, fantastic keeper. This is a side so good that, you know, players like Jimmy Greaves could get into the first team. Yeah. What do you think then? Does it deserve its place in football history, or is it overrated? Obviously, 1970 World Cup, they crash out, don't they? They don't get even to semi-finals of that tournament. So
and they previously don't do anything in 62 either.
62, they crash out earlier as well. So, you know, is there that prolonged success?
I think we're looking at sides here that have either an impact on international football for years to come, the way the game's played, or are incredibly successful, win a number of tournaments in a close space, you know, a dynasty.
Yeah.
This side wins 66 and nothing else. I am just very uncomfortable with people who are likely to be watching this putting them in the overrated category.
I think we'll put them in. You know, if British history, people say legendary, wouldn't they? Because the legendary status.
Yes. Compared to the rest, though,
I would say influential. Then influential on British football.
Influential on British football. I think, as we said, it gives England and British football that push to then for Celtic to go and win the European Cup the next year, Man United to win it in '68.
Brilliant. Right, let's go back then. Let's go right back to the first World Cup winners, Uruguay, 1930. However, we could probably argue 1924 and 28 as well, because of course those Olympic tournaments were, you know, basically a World Cup at the time, and they won those two as well, which is why they have 4 stars, on their badge. Obviously, that first World Cup held in Uruguay on home soil, 100 years after they gained independence. That team then, you know, they'd won the 2 Olympic Games, and then they had to really put their money where their mouth was and win that World Cup as well. Now, as the European teams start to come over as well, and you know they do it, and they do it in style. 4-2 in the final against Argentina. One of the players scores with one arm. Yeah, you know, amazing story there. And you know they set in stone a fantastic record. So, what do you think?
It's an interesting one again because obviously it was the first ever World Cup. They are etched into football history, and they will never be removed from football history in that way. Yeah. You know, the upcoming World Cups are planning to celebrate the centenary of it, aren't they? So I think it is incredibly important as a team. It was only a 13-team World Cup, though, wasn't it? Sides not travelling that far. I think some people would, when considering another side, would call them overrated, possibly, because they would say, you know, if you stuck them up against any of the sides to come, they would struggle. But then I don't necessarily think we should necessarily consider it that way, because we could say any side from 2020 physically in the 2020s would dominate further back. So I think we've got to consider them in their time.
Yeah, definitely.
Amongst their contemporaries. So I think they are legendary for...
I think they're legendary.
They're legendary for being the first World Cup winners.
Yeah.
You know, everyone knows it. People may not know where Uruguay is, but anyone who likes football knows the winners of the first World Cup were Uruguay.
Fantastic. Right, let's go. Who do you want to choose next?
I think let's bring it forwards a little bit and let's go a bit more modern.
Go on then.
Let's do France.
France 98 to 2000. Now, of course, this is, you know, we're starting to get into football now. Yeah. We can remember watching this side, you know, briefly. What a team. It's called a rainbow team, isn't it? Because it has, you know, players from different heritage. They're not all born in France, but they have, you know, all these different nations basically coming together.
Lots of African influence into that side, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Massive Algerian with Zidane, isn't it? Of course. Obviously, they win that World Cup. They beat a fantastic Brazilian side in the final. They smash them 3-0. They win the World Cup on home soil. Then, I think this is what makes this team a great team, that they then go and win the Euros 2 years later.
Yes.
With a golden goal in the final, of course, from Trezeguet. It's a great team. When you list off the players who played in it, there are massive world-class names. You've got Pires, Petit, Thuram, Desailly, you know, fantastic side, isn't it?
Yeah.
What do you reckon then?
I think this is what we were trying to talk about earlier when we were mentioning about, you know, carrying that on, the dynasty. Mm-hmm. And they do that 2 years later, which is incredibly hard to do.
Yeah.
I think they are a great side when you talk about people who remember watching them, you know, which lots of people do nowadays. When we've done things about the different decades, when we've talked about our favourite tournaments, comments are absolutely flooded with France 98 winning the World Cup, and then that Euro 2000 being one of the great tournaments and France being a great side in that tournament.
Yeah, of course, yeah. I mean, there's not much more to say is there on this team. What do you think then? Where are they going to go? I think it's quite a hard one to rank, actually.
They are.
Because they're not the greatest international side ever.
No, definitely not.
Are they good enough to be legendary, influential? They're not nearly men. They're not overrated either. I think they're going to have to go into, I don't know, legendary or influential.
Possibly influential on French football like England were influential on English football?
Yeah, I'm going to put them in influential because the 2002 World Cup, then they have that massive crash. They lose to Senegal. They go out in the group stage.
Yeah.
And Yeah, basically they couldn't quite go to that next level again with the team that probably should have done better.
Yeah.
Thierry Henry, didn't you mention him? What
Yeah.
a player. Right, let's go on then. Let's go and look at Netherlands 1974.
Interesting one.
Arguably the best side ever to not win the
Yeah.
World Cup. Introduced the world to total football, playing in that World Cup. Fantastic. They beat teams like Brazil, Argentina, fantastic sides as well. Obviously, though, the story goes, they lose that final.
Yeah.
Cruyff is, of course, the player of the tournament. He's amazing, but they come unstuck against the hosts, West Germany, and lose 2-1. Yeah, go on.
They played a huge part in a lot of people who remembered 70s football consciousness in terms of how they loved the game, their total football, Johan Cruyff, and just the style of football is something that he's revered throughout football history now, isn't it? Has such an influence on, ultimately club sides like Barcelona later on. I think it feels really difficult to just stick them in Neely men because they are ultimately Neely men. Mm-hmm. I think they bump up into influential even though they didn't win it. But you could convince me to Neely men.
They're almost legendary as well because you put a question on Twitter: who's the best international side of all time? And loads of people will say Netherlands '74 purely because of how nice football was. Yeah. We can't put them there because they didn't win the World Cup. Right? What do you reckon? Influential Neely men?
I mean, if we're being brutally honest, they are probably Neely men. They are the absolute epitome of a Neely man.
Let's put them there then.
Okay.
Neely men.
A brilliant Neely man, but a Neely man nonetheless.
And you could also say, can you 78 as well? Yeah. Then they lose another final. So they are...
Yes.
They are the World Cup's Neely men, aren't they?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's have a look. Your turn now. What are you going to choose?
I think let's go for one of our favourite teams, Hungary.
Hungary, 1950. So probably 1950 to 56.
Yeah.
What a side. They lose one game in 7 years, and the game they lose is the World Cup final.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
50-odd matches, wasn't it? This insanely good side revolutionised the game, playing this, attractive, exciting football, which, some people hadn't seen quite at that level before. You watch clips of them and you see some of the passes they do, some of the tricks, the flicks, the drag backs. They are way ahead of their time.
Yeah.
Their goal scoring record is phenomenal. I think in the World Cup '54 they scored about 25 goals. They scored 8 in one game, 11 in another. They smash England 6-3 at Wembley. Something that no one thought ever would be possible. And then go and beat them 7-1 in their return match as well. So
a match labelled as match of the century, wasn't it? That match at Wembley.
Yeah.
England had never lost a foreign side on home soil. And they are beaten by Hungary 6-3. And it must have absolutely flabbergasted the people watching it. And it is. If you look at newspaper reports, English football falls into a crisis after this.
Yeah.
So much so that it actually influences change in English football because they think we need to embrace the world game because England's crown had slipped where they thought they were was not where they were, not where their football was.
And you could probably say that the 66 side... in a weird way, can probably thank that defeat all those years before because it did change how English football was run.
Which I think Ramsey actually played in, the manager played in that game, and so it had a huge influence on him.
Tell you what they did win, though. They did win the 52 Olympics.
Yes, they did.
So they have got some, I would say silverware, but it's gold, isn't it? So some goldware.
And I know people would maybe mock a little bit of the Olympic title, but it was really significant back then, wasn't it? Really
and it was this side as well, wasn't it? So I think they were technically amateurs at that point.
Yeah.
Of course, in the legacy, those players go on to Real Madrid's, Barcelona's after the Hungarian uprising.
And Puskás was so significant on that side.
I think we mentioned him a few times before, Puskás, and we got the shirts behind him. I mean, we could do a whole video on this team. We've said that before as well.
Yeah.
Right, what do you reckon then? I mean, they're probably Neely men.
They probably are. I think if we're putting Netherlands in Neely men, it's an easy one. We've got to put them in Neely men too because
I feel so bad.
They lose that big game.
Go on then, Neely men.
They lose the big game. They lose the important game, and that is so difficult because football could look very different had they won that World Cup.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, Neely men. Right, let's go and look at Argentina 1986. Probably a side that I don't know as much about. we're often told this story that the '86 World Cup was all about Maradona, and Maradona won it for Argentina. I don't think that's the case when you actually look, at footage. Some of the other players in that side are, revered in their own right as well. And one player can't just win a World Cup for someone. So what do you reckon? 86.
But as much as a World Cup can be won by a player, he had a good go at it, didn't he? I think.
Well, yeah, he did. Yeah.
He was brilliant. I think if you speak to anyone who remembers this side in Britain, even Welsh and Scottish people, they are livid still by the handball, the hand of God. But this side really did grip.
Shilton should have jumped higher, shouldn't he?
Yes.
Let's be honest.
Yeah. And I was thinking about this the other day. People saying I wish it never happened. I don't wish it had never happened.
Who said that?
A player, an ex-player, someone who's lost it a little bit on X, on Twitter. And they were,
okay.
it was ridiculous. It should never have been allowed. Like, it was linked with VAR or whatever.
Yeah.
No, but this is such a significant moment in football in history. If you're going to lose to this team, which were a brilliant team, lose in that way, like a game that will forever go down
history,
because alongside that you get Maradona scoring the goal of the century from his own half. Incredible. Now, like you said, it's not just Maradona. That whole side were brilliant, and anyone who remembers the '86 World Cup will speak so highly of this Argentinian side. They were big in Britain because obviously the World Cup was a major thing for anyone at this time. You still see people wearing shirts of that, replica shirts around, is it retro shirts?
But is that because of Maradona?
Yeah, it's interesting that, isn't it? Okay.
Well, what do you think then?
That is interesting,
Go on,
isn't
then.
it?
Where are we going to rank them?
So for what we said, maybe actually Maradona does play a bigger role in that side being remembered.
Right. They're either going to go in overrated or I don't think they're influenced.
No, I don't think they play an influence. I think we stick in overrated and maybe we take the flak.
Yeah, sorry, Argentina.
But, the reason being, are the 1982 World Cup side remembered as strongly? Are the 1978 World Cup side remembered as strongly?
Yeah, let's put them there. I think Maradona
they won a World Cup.
Yeah, Maradona is arguably the GOAT, but the whole side as a side, maybe not in the same level
compared to some of these. Yeah, compared to some of these.
Okay, right, they're overrated.
Wow.
Okay, right. You said 2010s was just 10 years, so there you go. Yeah. Right, let's go and have a look at
Spain. Let's do Spain.
Spain, 2008, 2012. Now, you and I both love this side.
Yes.
We were talking before about, those years when you watch football all the time. We are at that sort of, when this side were, playing at their best, we were, 15 to 19, so we watched a lot of football.
That's the perfect little window.
They introduced the world under Luis Aragonés to tiki-taka in that 2008 Euros. It was an amazing... I remember watching at the time. I was like, this side's incredible to watch. I've never seen anything like this, these short passes. And they blew everyone away. Obviously, they win that. Then they repeat the success by winning the World Cup in 2010. Arguably, tiki-taka had taken a bit of a decline in how the attractiveness of watching it. Some sides had worked it out, so a lot of their wins were just 1-0s.
But Vicente del Bosque as well wasn't Aragonés, so maybe a slightly different change of manager there. But the fact that they won 2008 Euros, 2010 World Cup, 2012 Euros is a pretty significant.
The 2012 Euros, I think, is significant. Because it's one of the first times I'd seen I know Messi had played it for Barca, but I remember seeing the false nine because Fabregas played false nine in that tournament. And it opened up, Villa and David Silva and so on. A fantastic team. They got to be pushing for GOAT status, haven't they? Because of what they did, winning 3 major tournaments in a row.
Yeah.
I think recent years, people have got a bit annoyed and bored of tiki-taka.
Yeah.
Purely, watching the success of Pep's Bayern and the success of Man City. They're saying, they're just passing it around, possession. But it obviously works.
And Pep has always resented that with tiki-taka as well. He's always said that that's just possession for possession's sake. His football, for him, he sort of differentiates from that. Or certainly it does by the time he leaves Barcelona. So I think they're definitely influential because they have a massive influence on club football. And sides
100%.
trying to replicate that. Those names, whilst they're still sort of modern, Torres, Villa, Iniesta, Xavi, will always, in football history, 20, 30 years' time.
Just think of that midfield though. You got Xavi. This is what they had to choose from: Xavi, Iniesta, Busquets, David Silva, Xabi Alonso, Cesc Fabregas. As 6 midfielders to choose from straight away.
Yeah,
that's insane.
Yeah.
And obviously they do. And actually, 2008 was Senna, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Marcos Senna, and he might be playing a tournament as well. Right, where are they going to go?
For me, at least influential. You could push them into legendary.
They've got to go legendary. Fine. Come on. They're so good. I mean, I think they're pushing Goat State himself.
Yeah.
But we'll get a lot of flack if we put them there. Right, we got 3 teams to go. Let's look at Italy, 1934 to 1938. Maybe a bit of a controversial choice due to the 34 World Cup and the sports washing, Mussolini's Coppa del Duce. But, they go and win the 38 World Cup as well. They're the first team to win 2 in a row. Hasn't happened many times. What do you think?
I think this side was so significant in the growth of the World Cup, probably.
Yes, absolutely.
They win in 34 on home soil.
Yeah.
They do it with Mussolini, almost telling them they have to. There's no choice.
Yes.
The whole thing of Italian football then and Italian culture was about, masculinity, and you go out there and you do it for your country. And when you play, you make your country proud. He was a sportsman himself. He was the sort of the cult of personality. And they lived up to that Italian way of doing things. They were incredibly influential. They then win it again. I think that's the thing that pushes them into being remembered so well, because it wasn't just the one-off on home soil for the Coppa del Duce in front of Mussolini. It was the fact that they do it
in France, don't they?
In France, 4 years later. And who knows if the World War hadn't happened, the Second World War, they may well have gone on and won another.
Pretty sure they won. I don't think it's this side, but I think Pozzo, the manager, was also the coach of the 36 Olympic gold medal winners as well. Right, where are they going to go? They could either go into, I think, either legendary or influential. There's been a few sides like that, isn't there, so far?
Yeah.
Obviously got an influence on the 30s and football after the war probably as well. They have an influence on
the growth
just
of the game.
Just the growth of the World Cup.
Yeah.
But they are a legendary team because they won 2 World Cups in a row.
Yeah.
And if we're putting Spain up there for winning 3, I think we've got to put them in legendary.
Yeah. And probably history has done that a little bit. Time, it's nearly 100 years ago now. So they are remembered as more legendary than influential because people know that they won those 2 World Cups. Don't always give you the influence they had necessarily. Can't tell you what the influence they had. So I think, legendary is fair place.
Okay. Right, last 2 then. Who are you going to pick?
Let's go for Germany.
Germany 72 to 76. What a side. Semi-finalists in 1970. They win the Euros in 72. They win the 1974 World Cup
on home soil,
and then they lose the final on penalties of Euro 76 to Czechoslovakia because of Panenka's penalty. What do you think about this side? You know a lot about them. You've done a lot of research in the past. Come on, then.
Well, when we talk about that total football Netherlands side, the reason that Netherlands side are nearly men in our tier is because of this Germany side.
It is, yeah.
They prevent them winning that World Cup that everyone was convinced and everyone was wanting Netherlands to win. They win it on home soil. They win it against the odds. They have a famous loss to East Germany in the first group round in that World Cup. They bounce back. Beckenbauer effectively takes over management mid-tournament from Helmut Schön. Sounds similar to a little bit like what Ivory Coast went through in the Africa Cup of Nations currently. I think really when you look at this side, you cannot ignore how important they were when you think of some of the figures in the side, the players that people remember and talk about, and just the fact that you can make a side as good as the Netherlands, a Neely side.
I agree with that, but they got some fantastic fantastic names as well. In the side, got Paul Breitner, Bertie Vogts, Beckenbauer, Gerd Muller. Fantastic Sepp Maier and goals. They got a really good, memorable side as well.
Definitely.
And their success speaks for itself, doesn't it? Winning all those tournaments. If they'd won in '76 the Euros, I think we would be pushing them into the legendary category.
Okay.
But they don't win it. They lose the final. So I think maybe influential.
Okay.
What do you think?
I can live with it. I can live with it.
What would you say?
I think they're between those two categories. I think maybe you could argue legendary because of how far they got into all of those tournaments in that run. So it's pure success.
Let's put legendary then.
Pure success wise, I think you could argue they go there.
I think part of the thing these days is because Netherlands lost in '74 and people love that Netherlands side. Everyone almost thinks of West Germany there as like the bad guys.
Down on them, yeah.
Because they took the script away and they took it off Netherlands. Similar in '54 when Hungary lost again to West Germany. In that final. Right, last side, and it is Brazil 1970. I think we know where this one's going to go.
Yeah.
Everyone who saw this side loves them. Watching footage back, watching that fourth goal of the 1970 World Cup final. Goal. It just shows football at this purest form. Clodoaldo's dribble, the pass over from Jorginho into Pele, who knocks it, onto Carlos Alberto.
So nice.
They played an amazing way of football. They played, I think, 6 games in that World Cup. They won all 6 matches.
Yeah.
They beat England, the World Cup winners in the previous tournament. You see the famous Gordon Banks save in that game, but Jorginho does score to win it. Go on then.
Really, again, when you've talked to anyone who remembers this football or written about this football, they can't say enough about this side. It is a famous footballing side that has so much influence on British football, even though it was a Brazilian side. Everyone remembers it. Everyone wanted to be like those players that they saw in that Brazilian side. Obviously, Brazil have immense success in terms of World Cups. Win it in '58, win it in '62. England win it in '66. And then they win it again in '70. They almost rebuild again and go again as a second team in this tournament. And I think, you watch some of the highlights of this team. It's not out of place with modern football today. It's some of the football you see. Yeah.
I think this is an easy one then. Up into goats.
Yeah, I'd stick it in there and make sure you watch the video that you put together on this site too. We'll link it in the description.
It's a shame obviously that we never got to see them play ourselves, but I'm sure there'll be lots of people watching this video now who did get to see them, and I'm sure that they will agree that they are the greatest international side of all time. Just while we got you on this side, you can see just in the corner of the room here we have an amazing infographic made by Footy Infographics. This one shows the Brazil 1970 World Cup winners. Each of the players is represented by a football, and it shows both the goals and the assists of that side. Fantastic there, so please check them out. There is a link to it in the description below. There's also a discount code which is TFHB20, so please use that and please support this amazing creator, Footy Infographics. Thank you very much. Right then, are you happy with our tier list?
I think so. I think there's going to be some controversy, but that's not a bad thing. We want to hear your thoughts. We love hearing thoughts and opinions. Some of the things we've seen after making videos makes us go, oh yeah, that's a fair point.
Yeah, Euro 2008, we should have had it higher. Now, just because this is what we've rated it, it doesn't mean that necessarily Uruguay 1930 is the second best international side of all time.
Get the disclaimers in now.
But there we go. Tell us what you think in the comments. Have a go yourself on Tiermaker. Please like and subscribe and comment below. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.